Welcome, everyone, to the Girlfriend Book Club's monthly discussion. I'm Shelley Emling, the executive editor of the Girlfriend newsletter. I'm also the moderator of the Girlfriend Book Club. So this month, the more than 110,000 members of the book club chose the book club for troublesome women. So this, again, I read this in a weekend, and it's one of my favorite reads of the past couple years. It's just the writing is just amazing, and the four main characters, I'm just so taken with all four of them. I just loved every second of it. So we're so thrilled to welcome tonight the author Marie Bostwick. So welcome.
Hi, glad to be here.
So nice to have you here, especially since I just love this book so much. So I just have to ask you, I think most people that are watching this have probably read the book, so I'm not going to ask you for a synopsis, but I would like to know the inspiration behind the book.
Yes, well, it's so interesting. I love telling this story. So, as an author, I can never really predict where a good idea is going to come from. It can be so many things, but this particular time, it came from a source that was somewhat surprising, but also very, very close to me, right under my nose. My mom is 92 years old. And she is kind of a force of nature. My mom continues to work part-time as a consultant.
Oh my God.
Yeah. She is a clothes horse. She is a quick draw with a cocktail shaker. Um, when she moved into her independent living community a few years ago, like she called me up in the first week and said, well, I went to the activities committee meeting and now I'm the chairman. I was like, oh, please. Like that wasn't what you hadn't planned from the day, the first day. And like 2 years ago, she actually got another in a series of marriage proposals.
Oh my God.
Normally she doesn't really give these guys the time of day, but she informed me that this gentleman went to the Veterans Day party and looked really, really good in his Navy whites. So she kind of entertained his proposal, but after spending some time with him, she dismissed him with the quip she has used for so many others, and that is, thank you, but I have served my time. So, so my mom is, my dearest friend and so much fun. And she's also an avid reader. So about 3 years ago, we were getting together and we were talking about books, as we often do. And Betty Friedan's 1963 blockbuster, The Feminine Mystique, came up in the conversation. And Mom said, I don't know if I ever told you, but that book changed my life. Well, she hadn't told me. And so I asked her to elaborate. And within seconds, I knew I had stumbled upon an idea for a really great book.
Had you read the book at that time?
I had not. While I was alive in that time period, it was only just. So I had not read The Feminine Mystique. Now I've read it about 6 times. And so that was one of the first things I did was get a copy and read it. And it was really eye-opening and fascinating and infuriating all at the same time.
So I know there's 4 main characters in this book, but I think Margaret is the center stage, and you named her after your mother, I believe. Is that correct?
I did. She is not my mom at all, but it was an homage to my mom.
Right. So there's Bitsy, Viv, Margaret, and Charlotte.
Right.
First of all, I just have to ask, your mother must be bursting with pride over this book.
Oh my gosh, no, she is so funny. She's like calling me every day and saying, I sold another book, And when her friends are like, well, I couldn't get the book at the library, and she's like, well, just buy it, So she's a mom. She is very momming in her momness. And she calls me up sometimes and is like, so, if you get a movie, what do you think I should wear at the premiere? I mean, things like that. So.
Well, let's hope there's a movie. So how do you weave these 4 different story arcs? How do you merge them together?
Right. Well, as far as the process, is that what you're asking me?
Yes. Because 4 different kind of storylines, but they all blend together.
They absolutely do. And they are 4 separate stories, but each character, as you said, Margaret's the main character. And I kind of have long written ensemble casts. It's sort of what I specialize in. As near as I can tell, it's because it's maybe the hardest possible way to do a book. And I apparently like to do hard things. But I love reading those kinds of books. So that's what I gravitate to. And even when I have an ensemble, there's always kind of one main character, and you said, it's Margaret. I
Right.
think of the others as like nominees for best supporting actress. So they're really important, but Margaret is the most important story. So what I sit down and I do is I actually write an outline with each character as the hero of the story. So I write 4 separate outlines in this case,
Oh,
with
wow.
each character as the heroine of the story, because we are all the heroes of our own story. And as I'm doing that, I learn a great deal about that character and their viewpoints. I want to know, I want to know their history and their background. I know way more about their background probably than the readers need to know.
Right.
So I understand their motivations. I understand, importantly, what is it they most want in the world? What's standing in the way of their getting it? And then a really illuminating question I want to answer for myself is, what is it that they believe about the world or themselves that is wrong? And so as I do this and write these story arcs and these outlines for these characters, I get ideas for connection points where the story can trade off, important themes, and sometimes little plot things pop up. And then once I've done all that, I write the outline again,
For everything.
incorporating everybody into one overarching story. So the outlining takes a long time.
So I just have to ask, I think I read that it took you 3 years to write this book. Is that right? 3 years?
Um, well, it's, it probably only, like, from kind of idea and research and writing, probably about 2 years.
2 years.
But
Okay.
then once I finish the draft, it goes off,
Right.
to the publisher. So even in a normal case, if you add in the time the publisher has it, best case scenario from when I start a book to when readers get it is going to be a 2-year period. In this case, it's a little longer. I'm not writing quite as fast as I used to because I really want to take more time to really, really be able to write the best story I possibly can.
So I always ask authors, was there a particular character or scene or chapter or segment of the book that was more challenging for you to write than the others?
Ah, that's I thought you were going to ask me that was more fun to write. The challenging one. I will say the bits when Margaret and Walt were having difficulties
Okay.
were very challenging because I wanted to make it real and
Right.
impactful, but I didn't want to make Walt a monster because he's not a monster.
Not at
He's just a
all.
flawed man who
Right.
is not having a good year
Right.
in a lot of ways, who's really struggling. But when you're looking at it from Margaret's viewpoint, she doesn't know about that struggle yet.
Right.
And so the readers don't know about that struggle yet. So finding that balance to make a marriage that feels and looks like a real marriage, like I've been married for 40, almost 44 years. Let me tell you, we've had some fights, and I'm married to a very good man.
Right.
But we have our unlovely moments. So that was really, really challenging for me. Yeah.
So I know this took place in 1963. Was there a reason you chose that time period to focus on?
Mostly because that was the year the Feminine Mystique came
Oh,
out.
okay. Right.
So I really felt like that was a very pivotal year for a lot of women. And my research told me, and my conversations with my mom, but I did a lot of research, and I found that for many women, this really was what it was for my mom, an eye-opening moment when they read that book. And what they felt is what we would say in modern parlance is suddenly there were women who felt seen. And I think that was it. My mother felt seen. She was like,
Right.
"Oh my gosh, it's not just me." I which was kind of a relief, I think, for her, because she was starting to think, as I've read accounts from many other women about their response to the feminine mystique in that time period, they were feeling guilty or crazy.
Yeah.
Sometimes their doctors were telling them they were crazy, because it looked like everybody else was happy and it looked like they had everything that the world was telling them should make them content. So why weren't they content? And they were just sure it was their fault. So it was
You
really about the book. Yeah.
So you must have done a lot of research into the rights that women did not have in those days. I mean, I know you
Mhm.
pointed out that Margaret couldn't open a bank account or withdraw money from the bank, or
Yeah.
open a bank account because she had to
Open
get
a
her
bank account.
husband's
Right.
signature. So did you do a lot of research into what rights women did not have in those
Yeah,
days?
I did. I did, and I tried to look at, and one thing I take pains to point out at the end of the book is like how this experience would have been for you might very well have depended on where you lived
Hmm.
because things varied from state to state. And I actually I don't really read the reviews of my books because I've written it and I've been doing this a long time, so it's like sometimes it's not everybody's cup of tea and sometimes it is. But I saw something the other day where there was a woman who said, well, she exaggerated that thing about the bank account. I was able to open a bank account in 1963. She was single.
Yeah,
So, of course, a single woman could,
right.
but there were a lot of places in which, that a woman would have had to do that. Other things, one thing, seemed small, but it really bugged me is that I found out that it wasn't until, gosh, and I have been off tour for a while, so I used to have all these facts and figures and dates in my heads, but it wasn't until I believe 19 in the 70s, women could be excluded from a jury simply
Oh,
because
I
they
didn't
were
know.
women, which
I
was
did not know
horrifying
that.
to me,
Right.
right? And so in a big thing for women was, of course, 1974, the Equal Credit Opportunity Act. And this made it easier for women to get credit cards and open bank accounts. But it wasn't actually until 1988, I think. And forgive me if I'm wrong. I think that date is right because it seems so. I was just horrified. There was something called the Women's Entrepreneurship Business Ownership Act that allowed those same rights for women. So up until then, a company,
88.
if a woman wanted to open a business, she could be required to have a male relative as a co-signer. I read a story about a woman who, like, her 21-year-old son had to be her
Oh
co-signer
my
to
gosh.
open her business. I'm sorry, I had 21-year-old sons. Like, I
Yeah.
was lucky to get them to be able to operate the lawnmower. So this seemed ridiculous. So there were a lot of things like that
So
were, and of course there were things that were not necessarily codified in law too, just dealing with attitudes and women, just being, gosh, I saw something the other day. It was a little video, and this was maybe back in the 80s, where some television show, a man was saying, well, a woman could never be president because of menstruation. And and this wonderful brilliant actress cut him down and said, really? How do you know? Can you tell right now whether I am or I amn't? I was like, you go, girl. So, and that's part of why the part when, I was dealing with Margaret's daughter, Beth,
right.
being told, well, you're a girl, so you get to play clarinet, flute, or piccolo.
Oh,
And
I
when
love that part. Yeah.
right, because that was just an attitude. It's not a
Right.
rule, but it's sort of an unwritten
Yeah.
rule. And women were dealing with a lot of those unwritten rules. When I wrote that scene, I read it from my sister, and she was like, thank you. Thank you. I wanted to play trombone, So, yeah, a lot of us dealt with those
Yeah.
things too.
I played the flute and I was guided toward the flute when I was growing.
I ended up having to play the clarinet because they made my sister play the clarinet. And so then we had a clarinet and everybody had to play the clarinet. And I never liked it.
So I just have to ask, was Charlotte based on anybody in particular?
No, not really. My characters are, people often are like, oh, do you base them on people, in real life? Well, I mean, the thing is, I've been at this for 20 years. So if I had done it only with people I know, I'd either A, run out of material a long time ago, or B, run out of friends because everybody be mad at me. Um, I did the spark of the inspiration for Charlotte was a conversation, a couple of my friends who've been friends a long time. And this friend of mine, Susan, told the story of the first time she spotted our mutual friend Annie was many years ago when Annie was like tearing up to the Montessori school in wearing her mink coat in this convertible with the kids, and she was like, get out, get out, get out. Come on, hurry. Yeah, no time for a kiss. Go, go, go. And she thought, I want to know her.
Who is that
And
mother?
so something about the mink coat and the sort of confidence that Annie had was very attractive to my friend Susan, and that's where I kind of jumped off with her.
So I'm curious also as to you bringing in Katharine Graham and
Mm,
Jackie Kennedy. Had you
yeah.
planned to do that from the very start of this when you started this whole process, or
No, I had not. I had not. I mean, I knew, I started, and it's been such a long time ago. Sometimes it's hard for me to remember all of how the details work. But, I knew I wanted to set it in Northern Virginia and
right,
near Washington, D.C., because I liked the juxtaposition of this place where things are starting to bubble and change, but in this very staid suburb where things are not changing, you
right,
know? And so I liked that tension because really the Concordia is almost a metaphor for everything in a lot of ways. Um, and then I just started thinking about, these women are going to have to change. And of course, they're going to help each other. But I thought they're going to need bigger help. They're
yes,
going to need somebody outside. And then, so I started looking around. I was like, oh, Katharine
Katharine,
Graham. And that was such also, 63 is a pivotal year for Katharine Graham, as you find out in the book. So I liked this idea of a woman who, though already powerful in a sense, is coming into a different kind of power. And she is struggling with that too. So obviously, she begins 1963 as one of Washington, D.C.'s most well known and influential society hostesses. And she ends it as the first woman who is a publisher of a major American newspaper. I mean, right? And so then once I started doing that, I was like, oh, what other women in journalism can I pull in? And I had read this book, and I'm reading all the time, right? I read a book called Camera Girl, and I can't remember the name of the author. It's on my shelf, Camera Girl, and I do list that somewhere, I think,
you
in the book
do. You
and in
mentioned
the
that.
notes. Yeah, that talked about, which I'd sort of known, but didn't know that Jackie Kennedy really was seeking a career in journalism and had done it pretty seriously. And so I thought, oh my gosh,
Yeah, perfect.
being able to have all those women in the room at the same time, that was a great fun scene for me to write
Yeah,
and a pivotal one for the book.
I loved it. It was all about connections, as she said. It was, and that's true.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. And nobody can do it. You've got to champion yourself, but yes, we can help create connections. As I think I said, it can boost you over to look at the other side of the wall, but you've got to climb over.
Right. And so you talked a lot about women's magazines, and I'm guessing you went back and read a lot of older women's magazines. I
Yes.
wanted to
Yeah.
know about that, but also, did you read, what were some of your favorite women's magazines as you were of the last few decades? I mean, did you read
Well, I mean, when I was a little girl, McCall's, I always looked
Paul's? Yeah,
forward to McCall's. My auntie would save them for me because I cut out Betsy McCall paper dolls.
right.
I think it's so sad that my granddaughters don't have paper dolls to cut out of magazines.
Yeah,
Like that was a big thing for me. And when growing up, I read Reader's Digest. I loved
right,
all the fiction and the stories in that too. Um, as I got older, of course, it was the age of, I got 17 like every teenager of my era
yeah,
did. And then I went through my cosmopolitan phase.
right,
And I still like magazines. I don't get as many as I used to, but I still get magazines, and I think there is something I just prefer to read on a page than
yeah,
on a
sure,
screen.
right,
Yeah, and I think some of it's because my job is on a screen. So when
right.
I'm relaxing, I want to
Something in your
hold it
hand.
in my
Yeah.
hands. Yeah, yeah. So
So what's your writing process like? Do you get up at a certain time and write 5 or 6 hours a day, or do you have some sort of routine when you're really
well,
in the mood of writing?
I try to have a routine, but my life is not always my own. There are meetings there are digital things I have to do, and Zooms I have to do, and travel I have to do, and that's fine. But in an ideal situation, yes, I try to keep a pretty regulated day. I wake up in the morning, and 3 days a week I'm at the gym because I have learned as a writer, spending so much time in my chair, I have got to move, and
Right.
it just makes me healthier and happier in general too. So I do that first. I pray in the morning, so that is something I need to do before I get to my desk. And then once I get there, I take a quick look at the email, decide what must be dealt with, what can be
Right.
pushed off till later. And hopefully I would like to start writing by about 10 o'clock in the morning. It takes me a little while to get into it.
Uh,
So, but usually I'm in a pretty good place by lunchtime. I'm into the work. I do take a lunch break, but I tend to eat it standing like over the sink. And I do not want to have conversations with people with skin on, my husband, because as I point out to him, if he talks, the imaginary people leave the room.
right.
So
Right.
we need the imaginary people to stay. So then I take a break and then I'm going to write until probably 4 or 5 o'clock and then check the email again, deal with the last things. Um, you know, I used to write. Now I will say when my husband is traveling, um, that can totally be different. I may work until midnight
Right.
because my natural clock has adjusted to my marriage over the years. I'm more naturally a night owl, so sometimes that changes. And then sometimes what happens is if I'm coming up, especially if I'm coming up against either a deadline or I'm feeling a little stuck, I will actually check myself into a hotel or a resort or something, and
Yeah.
I will do like 14, 16 hours a day for about 4 or 5 days in a row.
Wow. Um, so everybody in the book club wants to know, what are you working on now? Can you share with us what you're working on next?
I really can't.
Oh,
Um,
shoot.
I can tell you I am looking at a similar time period, and I am looking at not a sequel, but something which would dovetail nicely with this book. Totally
Mhm.
different cast of characters. Lots of people have been writing me for asking, please write a sequel. I really feel that this was a complete story.
Right.
And that if I tried
Correct.
to go on with it, I don't think it could be as good as what I've done. So
Right.
I don't want to take anything away from that. But I've got a new cast I've got in mind. And I don't want to say more about it than that, not because I'm not trying to be coy. It's just I have learned that if I talk too much about it to civilians um, this early in the process, it sort of takes the juice out of the idea.
Right. So I have to ask also, I mean, what authors inspire you? Are there other books that you've read in the last couple months that you could recommend to the Girlfriend Book Club?
Oh gosh, I'm always reading a lot of books. So I really love Adriana Trigiani. I just think everything she writes is absolute gold. So that is wonderful. What are some books? Oh my gosh, there's so many books I've been loving, and can I think of what they are right now? Um, I read all different kinds of. Okay, I was late to the party with this, but I finally read The Women,
Oh, yes.
Kristen
That's,
Hanna. I,
yeah,
I know everybody had read it before me, and I'm not sure. I think I had maybe avoided it a little bit because I just wasn't sure if how I would feel about reading about the Vietnam era.
right.
And oh my gosh, it was so,
Yeah.
so wonderful.
That was a previous Girlfriend Book Club pick, and she joined us for our monthly discussion. It was, yeah,
It was
one of my favorites.
really, yeah, it was really, really, really good. So I liked that book very much. Um, let's see, what have else have I been? I've read Wayward Girls by Susan Wiggs, and that was really
Oh,
very interesting. Also, kind of about women
yeah.
struggling in this similar time period. And then there's a book that's really just fun, escapist that I read last year. It's a caper. I do love a caper, and so this was just joyous escapist fiction of sort of, we talk about buddy books. I mean, this was
Yeah.
girlfriend buddy books, and it was called The Starlets by
Oh, I remember that one.
Jennifer, a writing team of Jennifer Thorne and Lee Kelly, and really, I was like sending that book to people. I loved it so much. It was just fun. It was fun.
So just two more questions for you.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you would like readers to take away from this book?
Gosh, I really trust that readers like know what they need. That's something that's so magical about books. I think there is for a lot of, sometimes we're just entertaining people, but sometimes there's something somebody desperately needs in that book, and it's almost a mystical thing. So there's a lot in here, but I would say for me personally, if I had to like sum up one sentence that for me is the core of the book, it's what Margaret Wright's kind of in her essay toward the end, in which she said, you know, there are countless good and right ways to be a woman and only two wrong. The first is to assume that your way is the way, the only way. And the second is to buy into that nonsense and spend the rest of your life limping an aimless path in shoes that will never fit. And I think that's what I want. I hope that we make, you know, as women, we make room for women to be what it is they need to be and want to be.
Right. That's the crux of it. I've heard you say that before, and I feel that is true. That's the part that we want to take away.
That's for me, that's it. But
Yeah.
there's other things, you know, but that's for me.
So finally, the girlfriend is all about female friendship and the importance of female friendship, especially as you grow older. So I just have to ask, what do you like to do with your female friends for fun?
Oh, you know, it's so I have a lot of female friends, and I write about friendship and sisterhood over and over again because I agree with you 1,000%. It is the stuff of life. It is absolutely necessary. So just last night, a girlfriend invited me down to her. She has a house with a great view and a beautiful deck, and somebody I'm just getting to know. So she said, "Come for rosé," and I don't really drink, so I brought my non-alcoholic prosecco, and we just sat there and talked and talked and talked. And another thing, I like, I go on walks with girlfriends a lot.
Yeah.
So walking and talking is a great thing. And if we can bring the dogs along, so much
Even
the
better. I know.
Yeah.
I'm the same. I have 2 dogs. I love to walk and talk with the 2 dogs with me.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Well, thank you so much, Marie. Again, the book is The Book Club for Troublesome Women. If you haven't read it or bought it, please do. It's fabulous. And just a reminder to please stay on the page because I'll be posting some conversation starters after this so that you all can talk amongst yourselves about what you liked and about the book. And just a reminder that next month, September, our book is My Friends by Frederick Bachman, and he will be joining us the third Tuesday of September.
I may have to join the clubs because I would love to be there for that. He's a wonderful writer.
Yeah, I can't wait. I've never spoken to him before, so I'm so excited. So thank you, Marie. Best of luck. I'm so pleased for you that this is doing so well, and
Thank you.
Can't wait for your next book to come out, whatever it's about. I can't wait.
Thanks, Shelley. I appreciate that. It's so good to talk to you.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.